Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina, and I'm moderating the fifth Giving the Devil His Due audiobook panel in a series of live stream panel sessions with audiobook narrators, authors, producers, and editors held as part of boosting the signal for the audiobook edition of our charity anthology, the Shirley Jackson Award nominated Giving the Devil His Due, which is also a finalist in the 2023 Audi Awards. I'm Regina Yao, and I'm the founder and president of the Pixel Project, and I'm so glad you're all here with us today. Now, this charity anthology is part of our Read for Pixels program, through which we work with award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness and funds for our work to end violence against women and girls. It was initially launched in paperback and ebook editions by Running Wild Press in September 2021. But in fall 2022, we were thrilled to release the audiobook edition, which was produced in partnership with VoiceWorks Audio. And many of the finest audiobook narrators in the business came on board the cast, and we have two of them with us today. And today's show is also the first YouTube session of the ninth annual International Women's Day edition of our Read for Pixels campaign and the 14th Read for Pixels live stream panel session. The Pixel Project created these panel sessions to be an accessible resource for writers interested in approaching misogyny, sexism, gender, and violence against women in their work with depth, empathy, and accuracy in their stories and storytelling. And what better topic than Hear Her Raw? So let's put English. So Hear Her Raw, the power of audiobooks to imagine a world where there is justice for victims of violence against women. And here to participate in today's discussion are four of the key people who are an invaluable part of our anthology. So let's start with the introduction. So on the bottom left right hand corner, left and right bottom left right hand corner is Angela Yuriko Smith. Angela is an acclaimed American poet and two-time Bram Stoker award-winning author, Horror Writers of America Mentor of the Year for 2020, and the publisher of Space and Time magazine, a publication that has been printing speculative fiction, art, and poetry since 1966. And Angela wrote the really awesome story for our anthology called Justice League. And right above Angela is Kate. Kate Forbes, and she's a Golden Earphone and Audi Award-winning narrator of audiobooks. She has acted for 35 years on Broadway, off-Broadway, and nationally, winning a Theatre World Award and Callaway Award for her work. Her film and television credits include even Evanora Harkness in the MCU, that's Marvel Cinematic Universe's WandaVision, and its upcoming spin-off, and Mrs. Fairfax in both seasons of the PBS series Mercy Street. Kate is the narrator of Justice League by Angela.
Yay.
And next to Angela is Leanna Renee Hieber. Leanna is an award-winning best-selling author of historical fantasy novels for Tor and Kensington Books, such as the Strangely Beautiful Saga, the Eterna Files trilogy, and the Spectral City series. A classically trained actress featured in film and television, Leanna created and tours a one-woman show portraying 19th century designer Clara Driscoll. And next to me, last but not least, is Cynthia Farrell. Now, Cynthia's award-winning career spans audiobook narration, commercial voiceover, and video game voiceover, and she has developed a fan base for playing Catalina in the Grand Theft Auto game series. She is known for her portrayal of strong female characters and has recorded approximately 200 audiobooks spanning all genres. Cynthia is the narrator of Escape from Pleasant Point by Leanna Renee Hieber. And aside from joining today's panel, both Angela and Leanna have donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have up as perks for donors at the Read for Pixels Braille fundraising page. Now, Leanna and the Pixel Project has joined forces to bring you two book bundles that are packed with feminist ghost stories of both the fiction and non-fiction genres. Each bundle comprises a first edition paperback of A Haunted History of Invisible Women, True Stories of America's Ghosts, which Leanna co-authored with Andrea James. The first book of its kind, it is a finalist for the Bram Stoker Awards for Superior Achievement in Nonfiction. And secondly, there's a special edition paperback, which is actually out of print now because we moved to the classic edition of Giving the Devil His Due, which was, as I mentioned before, a finalist in the edited anthology category of the 2021 Shirley Jackson Awards. And we are also adding in the one copy of the audiobook edition of Giving the Devil His Due, which features some of today's finest audiobook narrators, including Kate and Cynthia, who are here, Alyssa Brasnahan, Eduardo Ballerini, Christina Moore, Nancy Wu, Robin Miles, and more. Now, here's an interesting twist that Leanna has added to one of the bundles. She will be personalizing it by adding handwritten personal insights and notes to both books to provide you with a fuller and richer one-of-a-kind reading experience. So we would totally recommend whoever donates to get this. It is one of a kind. Leanna's not going to do it for any. This is your only chance to get it. And we would recommend listening to the audiobook while reading the story and reading Leanna's notes. That is like full immersion in the story. And Leanna has written a really, really great story, which Cynthia will be reading an excerpt of soon. And this is for US donors only, everyone. US donors only. Now, for donors worldwide, Angela is offering a guest slot in her show, Exercise Your Rights, that's WRITES, which is her online talk show for authors. And this is an opportunity for you to talk about your journey as an author so far. Now, reading Your Rights is usually booked up months in advance with past and upcoming guests, including horror luminaries such as Lee Murray, Alma Katsu, and Linda D. Addison. And the show will be aired at 2 p.m. Central Time on May 20th, 2023, and can be broadcast live or pre-recorded. And the donor is also free to gift this opportunity to someone else if they wish. Now, for those of you who are interested in getting your very own copy of Giving the Devil His Due, you can either donate to get one of our Giving the Devil His Due bundles on our fundraising page, or you can order the audiobook, the ebook, or the paperback from major booksellers worldwide. All net proceeds go towards keeping our anti-violence against women work, including this program, Read for Pixels, alive and kicking. Now, just a quick reminder that you, the audience, will also be able to ask our panelists questions live today. Just make sure that you are logged into YouTube. Otherwise, you won't be able to type in your questions into the chat box next to the screen. And once you type in your questions, Anusha Kandasivam, who's today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read out to the panel to answer. Now, before we begin the panel session, both Kate and Cynthia have a treat for you. So they are both going to read excerpts from the short stories that Leanna and Angela have written, and it's in the book. And we will begin with Kate, who will be reading the opening scene from Justice League by Angela. And then after that, it'll be followed by Cynthia, who will be reading from Escape from Pleasant Point by Leanna. And then after that, we will start with the discussion and the Q&A session, everyone. So let's put Kate on screen. Here we go, Kate. Are you ready, Kate? I'm going to put the title on screen for you. All right. Take it away, Kate.
Oh, sorry. I have an echo. Just Us League. Angela Yuriko Smith. Contrary to the name, the Glad Shop wasn't. It had been a happy place at one time. Mr. Glad did his best to live up to his name, but eventually age caught up to the sweet old man, and his son stepped in to run things. Unfortunately, Matt Glad was everything his father wasn't. Matt hired pretty young cashiers and then fired them when they wouldn't date him. He consumed whatever he wanted from the shelves, literally eating away profits. The back office was littered in wrappers, empty cans, and overflowing ashtrays. The smell traveled through the entire store. Where once people came from surrounding neighborhoods to shop glad, now they went out of their way to avoid it. Matt didn't care. He had grown up with the shop as his playground, and that hadn't changed. His best friend was Will Banger, an equally loathsome character and his second in command. The third part of the management trio was Jack, a young kid saving up to go to business school. If it weren't for Jack, the Glad shop would have been ruined years before. He kept things going, if not well, then the best he could. The break room in the back housed a 50s-era dining room table that wobbled and a small set of salvaged lockers. The walls were dingy beige cinder block flecked with decades of grime. Rumor had it the old table had witnessed a number of disgusting things, the most recent of which involved a 14-year-old bagger with shiny hair that smelled like cinnamon, and Matt and Will. Her English wasn't great, and her parents spoke it even worse, so the whole thing just seemed to evaporate. It had been Gertie, Glad Shop's matron of maintenance, that had held the crying girl. Gertie believed her, but that was no help. People listened to old female janitors even less than they listened to pretty Hispanic girls with broken English. Like using nasty mop water, Gertie often thought when she cleaned the break room. It can dry up and look okay, but the filth is still there, leaving a stink. It was under the chipped old table that Gertie first discovered the curious business card. Lying face up on an oily stain, it read, "Feeling oppressed? Let us help. The Just Us League specializes in discreetly disposing of tyrannical leadership and bullies. We guarantee our work. As a not-for-profit agency, we do not require deposits, nor will you ever receive a bill. To utilize our services, simply write the name of the offender in the space provided. We promise it will remain between just us." Gertie picked it up, read it 3 times, and flipped it over. On the back, there was a line to write on. On the back, there was a line to write on. And underneath, in small block type, was "Name your tyrant," with an empty line waiting for a name. Obviously, this was a joke, but she couldn't help but daydream for a minute. As a socially awkward middle-aged woman, her life was a long line of tyrants, starting from her heavy-handed father to now. The years unwound as she watched her life collapse like a spent party balloon. If only it was as easy as the card said. It was like the working-class equivalent of a magic lamp. The swinging door slamming open around the corner startled her. She shoved the card in her pocket as Matt came in with a 6-pack. She was pinned against the lockers by his gaze. I'm sorry. "Is this what I pay you for? To stand down here looking dumb?" Gertie couldn't answer. She just shook her head. "You're lucky I keep you on. Anyone else would fire your fat ass." Gertie bit her lip and nodded again. She knew from experience the best thing to do with words was bite them back until they tasted like blood. Her heart was trying to break its way free from her ribcage, but whether it wanted to attack or flee, she never knew. Matt stared at her and then raised his eyebrows. "Well, move it, dumbass. Someone pissed all over the toilet. I've been looking for you for over an hour." Gertie jumped. "Oh, sorry, I was checking the break room." Her voice scrambled to hide as she passed by him toward the exit. Her shoulder brushed the opposite wall as she gave him a wide berth. He swiveled to watch her pass. "Oh, Gertie!" She stopped to listen, barely turning. Her body was one big flinch, waiting to spring away. "I think it might be my piss all over the toilet." He laughed and opened the fridge. Gertie let the flinch loose, and it carried her away through the swinging doors. At the bathroom, she pulled her cart up, went in, and locked the door. It was a mess, all right, and she didn't doubt that Matt had done this. And he frequently left puddles of urine for her to clean up. He thought it was funny. She wanted to punch him in his vacant, spoiled face. If only that card wasn't a joke. She pulled it out of her pocket and read it again. If only. There was a pen or two on her cart. She reached out, found it hiding under the pile of rags, and closed the door again. She locked it. She placed the card on the sink edge and wrote on the back of the card, "Manager, Matt Glad." Only, she thought, if there really was such a thing as a Just Us League, he would deserve anything they could do to him. Him and all the rest like him. She imagined a group of superheroines dressed like ninjas in black with gold tiaras. But it was just a stupid joke, like her stupid life. She stuffed the card and pen in her pocket and started mopping up pee. She forgot about the card as survival returned center stage.
Thank you so much for that really powerful reading, Kate. And now, almost to Cynthia. So let's put Cynthia on screen.
Shall I go into it?
Okay. Yes. So today, Cynthia is now going to read an excerpt from Escape from Pleasant Point.
Escape from Pleasant Point. An Evelyn North Stewart origin story. By Leanna Renee Hieber. 1900, Manhattan, by way of 1855 Manhattan. Do I begin this tale at the point where my enemy ran screaming down a ravine, or do I begin at the beginning? I suppose, in the interest of a narrative where such a dire result is cheered as a victory, one must first appreciate the struggle that precipitated it. Here in this new era of the New World, 1900, can we even imagine such a number as this? Yet in order to tell this tale, I must recall the 1850s, a time when the world was much different, vastly more unfair and unjust, when I was a young woman. A time I would just as well have blocked out. Dearest granddaughter, you've pressed me for this tale for so long, and I confess I do not want to tell it. But seeing as though it might prove useful to a future case involving involuntary committal, or to support your aim of helpful ghostly narratives, perhaps it is my duty to tell you. Take these words, you and the spirits, and turn them into something that brings light to darkness. The day my parents finally had enough of my mad connection to spirits, clairvoyance, premonitions, and other visionary notions was the day my world turned helpless and hopeless. And damn it all if my worst days weren't yet ahead of me. My parents were hard workers, factory workers. My father having fallen from money to desperation through a series of financial errors. In the 1840s, New York City was booming with labor, and so much of it was rough and hard on the body. For my mother in the textile mill and my father in the ironworks. I was raised in an atmosphere where only work and puritanical devotion to an angry God mattered. My aunt, bless her, was a respite of kindness and an empathetic mysticism. But I was not with her often, as she was far upstate. My awareness of spirits and the sensitivities that moved me, of the way I intuited things about the world around me before hearing any of the details, were all out of place in a home where the only storytelling was a biblical parable, and the only praise came if I kept quiet and did my chores early. My best friends, my only friends, were specters. I couldn't often see the spirits, but I always felt them. A cool presence at my side, an eerie whisper on the breeze, and the unmistakable way they asked me to help them. This was done mostly by just acknowledging them, by asking them about their hearts, and in doing so, allowing the weight of what tethered them to the living to be levied and set free. I didn't know why presences were drawn to me like moths to a flame, but something about my soul's light drew them. Late into the evening, I would speak to them in whispers, when I wouldn't be overheard, when I wouldn't be reprimanded or swatted for talking to myself. When I was around the age of 10, I wondered if I was indeed mad, if the voices I occasionally heard, or the sights I saw, the temperature that changed, were my own invention. I expressed this fear to one of my favorite ghosts, a young woman named Lena, who had perished of scarlet fever on the site of our tenement building years prior. Lena responded to my fear with a soft murmur that caught on the breeze and landed on my ear. A proposition. Test us. Throughout the next week, the 3 or so presences most often drawn to me proved their truth to me in different ways, by moving objects, by reporting something I could not have known that was proven true. I knew after these simple experiments that I was a part of something inexplicable, but very real. I cannot blame my family for being unimaginative. What I will decry is not being allowed my own imagination. What they deemed at first a fancy grew in their minds like a disease into something they feared with every fiber of their being. As my abilities became hard to hide, and as the occasional poltergeist action would be witnessed. The only thing that could be true was that I was courting the devil himself, that I was a witch or possessed, corrupted. That was the most painful thing, I think. That something I felt connected me to God could be thought so suspect. The spirits only wanted my understanding and care, and they cared for me in turn. That relationship has always been beautiful, never evil. When I turned 16, my powers became unmistakable, and a new onslaught of presences was drawn into my orbit. My life, mind, energy, and interactions became unmanageable without a mentor or training. I was told to pack some things as we were going on a trip. Something within me stirred. One of my preternatural instincts that said to pack as if I were never coming back. Terrified, I hoped this premonition was more dramatic than would pan out. I packed a few favorite books, a favorite dress, and the 2 simple pieces of heirloom jewelry I hadn't been asked to sell. Simple, tactile belongings. My other most valuable treasures, the spirits that chose me as a haunt, went with me no matter where I roamed. During the ride uptown, far uptown, past the limits of what really could be called the city, my destination queries remained unanswered. I stopped asking and remained silent as my father drove the borrowed hack and my mother refused to look at me. As Manhattan narrowed in width and rose in elevation, and the trees grew thicker and the road less trodden, we curved along the upper western part of the island, a dramatic landscape I would find beautiful if I weren't so unsettled. The carriage stopped in front of a house that looked nice enough, a whitewashed wooden 2-storied farmhouse with rugged countryside around it. A placard on the iron gate stated, "Pleasant Point." It did not feel pleasant. There was commotion getting me and my bag down from the hack as I returned to pleading, begging someone to tell me why we had come there. I don't remember exactly what was said to me. Not that any words mattered in the end. The ghosts who had bonded to me made quite a tumult on my behalf, swinging the gate, opening and slamming the doors of the hack, tearing at my bonnet and the clothes of 2 people quite ready to dispose of me. "Evelyn Pierce?" called a woman in a white dress, something a nurse or a nun might wear. She was halfway up the jagged slate walk, having come out to inspect the commotion. "Come in. Would you come have a chat with me over a cup of tea?" I stormed ahead, not knowing what else to do. This woman knew my name. I was expected. A ghost tugged at the back of my hair, undoing pins as if trying to drag me away. I wish I'd let them. Looking ahead, a few forms were visible in the upper floor of the farmhouse, dimly backlit at curtained windows. Shadows listening. "Please quiet down," I murmured to the spirits as I stepped ahead and into the walk. "For all our safety." When I looked behind me, my parents had retreated to the carriage and it was already speeding away. My bag-laden arms shook with shock and I felt very weak, as I turned ahead to see the woman holding the door open for me. Her face was blank, the gamesome expression gone. "I am Mrs. Stone, your nurse. Mr. Stone, my husband, your doctor. He will see you now in his study. Be a good girl and go on ahead." The only word that mattered next was the one that had already been written on my intake form. A condemnation. A lie. I was not ill. Plenty of people in the world see spirits or have had an inexplicable ghostly encounter. And yet, I soon found myself in a small study with an unfriendly-looking man, Mr. Stone, dressed in a white laboratory coat with an unsettling glint in his eye. He opened a file to a simple intake form on the desk between us. By my name, Evelyn Pierce, glared a word that to this day strikes at my heart. A wound that will never heal. Delusional. Seething rage flooded my veins, my cheeks, the tips of my ears. The idea that this had been written ahead, arranged, that this form already damned me before I could even offer testimony. This was and remains unforgivable. I continue to fight for laws that decry such false pretense and institutional imprisonment without just cause. Panicked, I ran from the room. I fled the house and careened down the crooked slate walk, stubbing my toes and not caring a whit, my eyes only on the gravel lane beyond. There were lights and smoke in the distance. We were uptown, but not so far as to be without recourse. This wasn't the wilderness. This was still Manhattan. The gate was locked as I threw myself against it, trying my weight against the resistant iron hinges. A sudden, sharp sting blossomed on my neck. My hand grazed where the sharp pain was focused, and my fingertips found a long needle lodged there, as if it had been shot from some kind of gun or bow. My hand came away bloody, and the world went dark. I have no idea how long I was under the influence of sedatives, confined to a bed. While I was not physically restrained, my body was numb. In those first moments coming to after my escape attempt, the most terrifying things were the sounds I heard. Footsteps went down a hall. A low, detached, unkind voice I recognized as Mr. Stone was at the doorway of another inmate. He went into a room down the hall, and I heard the clatter of what sounded like chains scrambling back and a muffled noise of desperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
You're welcome. I loved your writing.
Oh, we have some feedbacks. The viewers are actually reacting to your reading right now. Oh, before I put that on, Kate accidentally got disconnected and she's trying to get back in, which is why there's just 4 of us in here right now. So the first one is from Bo Morky, and he says, very powerful. Cynthia's living the moment, makes the one top of the page. Amazing, bravo. Anusha, our producer today, says she has goosebumps.
Thank you, Anusha.
And Missy 306, who is one of our regulars, she's also a librarian on the West Coast, and she says amazing narration.
Thank you so much,
let's get started. And I'm changing this back to our usual format. So let's get started with today's discussion session. Oh, Kate. Oh, wait. Kate was back and Kate is not back again. So let's just get started because we've got about another 40 minutes of discussion. Kate's back. Hi, Kate.
Hi,
Welcome
Kate.
Oh, beautiful, Cynthia.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
you're back
Kate.
just in time for us to start the discussion. So
you,
let's get started. Okay, so one of the most heartbreaking aspects of violence against women as a human rights atrocity is the persistent and widespread lack of justice for victims that is perpetuated and perpetrated by religious and cultural beliefs that validate male violence, misogyny, and victim blaming against the backdrop of weak legislation and dysfunctional criminal justice systems. So even with the advent of the Me Too movement, victims and survivors remain silenced and shamed by society, and far too few men face appropriate consequences for their acts of domestic and sexual violence against women and girls. Indeed, there is a higher chance of a man getting convicted for murdering someone on the street than for killing his own wife or daughter or mother. And in recent years, the infuriating reality of the socially enforced lack of justice that is unique to violence against women has been featured in speculative fiction, but it is addressed creatively and effectively. And the theme is the beating narrative heart of all the stories in Giving the Devil His Due, including Angela and Leanna's tales. And the victims and survivors in these stories receive justice, albeit by supernatural or paranormal means, a la Rod Serling, who pioneered, I think, in the 20th century, the modern version of these fables. And these stories are cathartic for a lot of people who read it. We get it. We get the people, leaving reviews saying, "Oh, this is so cathartic." But I think more importantly, in some ways, it helps readers imagine a world where violence against women is actually treated as the crime against humanity that it really is. So, with that in mind, today's panel will discuss how audiobooks and the power of stories and storytelling can help people imagine a better world where there is justice for women and girls who have suffered from gender-based violence. Because if we can't imagine it, we can't build it. And because for there to be a more equitable world, we need to believe that we can actually get there. And the danger is when we can't believe we can get there, and so we won't build. So let's get started with the first questions. So the Pixel Project created Giving the Devil His Due to harness the power of speculative fiction and storytelling to help readers imagine a world where violent, misogynistic men get their comeuppance for abusing women and girls Twilight Zone style. So this is a question for Angela and Leanna. So thank you for writing your respective stories, Justice League and Escape from Pleasant Point, for the anthology. What are your thoughts about having an audiobook edition of the anthology, including the amazing readings of your stories by Kate and Cynthia? So let's get started with Angela. So we'll just go clockwise, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to both of you for bringing life to those stories. That was amazing and such a treat. And I will say a bucket list moment that I didn't know existed. I did not know that I needed that in my life. But thank you for that. And I think one of the powerful things about the audiobook is in the case where you may have somebody that is not free to maybe have a written book as evidence. And so sometimes in these situations, people are controlled, women are controlled. And so you don't want the wrong reading material to be found. But listening to an audiobook leaves no evidence. Nobody can know what things you are listening to, what things might be helping you. So I think that's one of the key things that is so powerful about the audiobook and what you guys are doing with them is you're enabling these stories to be reaching people in a whole nother way, where they don't maybe have access to a physical copy of something or want to keep it around.
Yeah. Leanna?
Excellent point.
I think, and I also have to just echo that it's one thing sort of having heard the audio before. It's another thing hearing it as you're doing it, and your performances just Kate, incredible, and Cynthia, it's one of those wonderful moments where like, oh, did I write that? It's so incredible because it becomes something beyond me, and I just I had tears in my eyes because this character, Evelyn, has been with me for 13 books now, I think, that she's been with me as a character. And she's always withheld all of this information from me. And so I wanted to share this with an audience of a woman who didn't want to talk about her past. And I really think that that's very relatable to victims. And so making it, I don't tend to write in first person very often, but one of the things I wanted was that power of what a first person narrative can offer. And I think that the power of the first person narrative, using, I did this, I am telling you this story. When that is utilized as beautifully as you've utilized it as a performer, I think that just makes it so much more visceral. I think it just makes it so much more personal. And so even though it was almost against my comfort zone writing in first person, this was Evelyn's story. She had to be the one to tell it. She fought me the whole way trying to tell it. And so I really had to sort of coax it out of her, because again, at 13 books, there's been a lot of things with her as a matriarch character, as a woman who sort of knows everything that's going on. She's very much a mentor figure for everyone else. And here it's really much more of the opposite. And I think that that's the case of a lot of victims who become very, very strong women.
Yes.
But have had moments when they were not the strong woman. They did not know what was going to happen. They did not have advice to give. And so I wanted to really allow for that. And I didn't know exactly what had happened to Evelyn. She really didn't want to tell me. And it was only when she saw someone else being wrongly committed, which was something that happened in the 19th century. So that's another, I don't want to take this into historical context, but women did get very often committed against their will in the 19th century. And so that's her seeing it happen to someone else. She had this almost overblown reaction. And I thought, oh, there's something to that. And I think that these really big, powerful emotions, I think that audiobooks can drive them home in a way that, like, we can aspire to have that reaction on the page, but it's a whole nother thing when they're vocalized.
I completely agree.
So I'm going to say now, I'm just going to add that Leanna actually wrote this story, despite the fact that she had 10,000 other deadlines. So she actually stopped and dragged the story out of Evelyn for us. And for that, we thank you, Leanna.
Yeah, I will do it. I did it just for you because Evelyn didn't want it told. And I literally I had a whole week of like all-nighters because of this, but it was worth it because I love her as a character, and she thanks me now for it because, but you are all worth it, and this cause is worth it.
I think it was basically an encapsulation of the phrase, it was time. It was time for her story to come out. Mm-hmm. So now I have a question for Cynthia and Kate, which is, thank you both for donating your time and talent to recording these stories for the audiobook. Both of you are very much in demand, and both of you are so busy. We thank you so much. And both of you are among the best narrators in the audiobook business with your choice of projects. Why did you decide to join the cast of our anthology despite knowing that the issue of violence against women is a really difficult one? So let's start with Cynthia because we're still going clockwise. So Cynthia, your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, the most basic initial reason was that Andy Paris asked me to narrate it. And right, Kate's nodding her head. We all bow to Andy Paris. I mean, I personally do. He is just I could go on. And I hope he's watching, but maybe he'll watch later if he's not. One of the, stalwart people in our industry, has been in it forever. And I respect him, as an actor, as a director, as a mind in this business. And I've worked with him and for him for a long time. So he could ask me to read the yellow pages and I'd be like, sure. So that was the first thing. And then your word was despite the topic being VAW. It was actually because of the topic, of course. there is, I don't know how many generations will have to fight this, hopefully not many, but it is such a big fight, from the smallest, most insidious, not obvious way that it happens to the largest, most horrific, egregious way. I've been a victim of it in my way, right? And I think, I hope I'm wrong, but I was going to say, I think most women can give examples of some type of misogynistic interplay in their lives. For me, it was my divorce and all of those characters and lawyers and exes and blah, blah, and I could go on and I won't. But so yes, it was because of the cause. And this number three, and up there with the Andy and the VAW is the gorgeous writing. I read this and it's just, you just wrote this for the Pixel Project? I'm sorry, I don't believe you, but okay. It is so magnificently written. Every phrase, I mean, Kate knows in our work, I mean, we're looking at each sentence and what does that mean? And it's really a detailed craft we do, right, Kate? And we know when there are a bunch of sentences that shouldn't be written that way, or what are they saying? And it's just a mush, and every single word you've chosen, without being in your head, it's just magnificent writing. So I'll be quiet. That was too long-winded. I'm sorry.
Kate,
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the writing, of course, I mean, yes, Andy is a great friend, and violence against women, gee, I do mainly classical theater, and if there's one thing I've had to learn, it's how to take a punch, how to die, I mean, it's astounding, really. I'm still mad about it. Shakespeare wrote a great speech about it. It's Angela Carter, if you know her, writing The Bloody Chamber. Because Leanna, it reminded me a little bit of that just slightly. But, the mother becomes the heroine in that. It's a retelling of an old folk tale. And the mother is the savior. The mother rides across on the stallion and rescues her daughter. But, yeah, and I've got, it just raised all these questions for me too, reading it, because it felt transgressive to me. And I realized, especially the story I read, just one of my little experiences where someone just grabbed me and felt me and I couldn't get away. And I just, afterwards, all I wanted to do was smash his face into the pavement. I mean, I had these very violent, it wasn't me. I thought about, I've got to take self-defense. No, not self-defense. I'm going to learn how to, but is that it feels unnatural. And in a way, and I loved one of the things you wrote, Angela, about her heart beating so fast, she didn't know whether she was trying to escape or going to attack or escape, and how she would try to hide with her voice. And there's so many examples, and hold your tongue. I will not hold my tongue. It's everywhere. Oh gosh. And but what breaks my heart a little bit is that it's a fantasy. That the solution, it's not a solution, but right now, powerlessness, it's like I fantasized a lot about learning how to become a black belt in karate, but I didn't ever do it. I don't know. And I wondered about the difference between justice, if there is, and vengeance, and what does comeuppance mean, really? Because, sometimes it's the framework, too, right? I'm probably getting lost. I've said enough now.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of what we're discussing today. So giving the devil's his due. It's inspired by the original Twilight Zone, through which the legendary Rod Serling used speculative fiction to critique social issues ranging from consumerism to fascism. And he helped people see alternative worlds that take the effects of such issues to their extreme and logical conclusions. And what's interesting is that his stories largely do not address the issue of sexism and violence against women. I love Rod Sterling's stories and storytelling, but that, I think, is his blind spot. I might be wrong,
White
but
men. No, I
yeah, I think it's his blind spot that he's not addressing that side of, the isms as much as he could have. So giving the devil his due is, in a sense, filling that particular gap, like decades later, almost a century later, we're filling that gap. And in light of this, let's talk about the power and potential of audiobooks to help people imagine a world where there is justice for violence against women. So how can audiobooks help amplify the power stories like Angela's and Leanna's, to get people to start thinking about the importance of ensuring that violent men receive all the appropriate consequences of their violence towards women and girls? So again, we are going to go in clockwise. So we'll start with Cynthia. So Cynthia, you are still
I'm
muted.
muted. I was actually going to ask you to explain the question a bit. So if you wanted to give it to Angela, or I think we're going this way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with Angela. So how do you think audiobooks can help people envision a better world, a world where,
Well, there's a quote that I recently read that I fell in love with, and it's by Frank Herbert, and it's: "The function of science fiction is not always to predict the future, but sometimes to prevent it." And that's kind of what I see with the audiobooks. This is a way to get these stories out. So maybe, and this happened to me, I had a situation with a divorce, and a social worker came up to me and said that I was abused. Like, she was like, "Oh, these are all signs of abuse." And I was like, "No, I don't even know what you're talking about. I was never hit. These are the things, these social workers, they always have to create a problem when there isn't one." But it's like, then I could not unsee it. I could not unsee the things in my life that were emblematic of that. And so I feel like that is the strength of these, like the audiobooks and the stories that we're telling, the stories that everybody has told in this book, and tells in other things, but specifically this book is, perhaps it's a little whisper to somebody of what may be there that they can't see. I mean, there's a reason why they've picked this book, or why it was given to them, or why they chose this story, why they're fascinated with it. And fiction mirrors us. It's, we are held up and we see ourselves in it. And so I kind of feel like that is the power of it, is to tell the truth in a way that maybe, don't tell me this is me, because I'm not going to believe you. I don't want to believe you. But if I see it in somebody else, I might see facets of myself, and then be able to process that better, and then hopefully get out.
Yes.
Leanna?
Yeah, I think honestly, building on what we've been talking about, just the power of hearing a woman's voice talk about her situation. There's just not it takes it in a way that you can't, just like Angela was saying, you can't unsee it. You also can't unhear it when you are hearing these narratives. And so much about our stories as writers are also about giving a voice to the voiceless, especially as I'm writing about 19th century women who would not be able to vote for a very long time. In the case, women's property laws, women being able to own property, was only just now even a whisper on the wind at the time that Evelyn was interned in this particular situation. And the concept of being believed, I utilize that as a double, sort of a double whammy in what I'm writing about. It's not only that she's not being believed that she is in fact a medium and can hear spirits, she's also not believed as a woman. And we all of us know, every woman knows what it is like to not be believed. All of us know it is sort of a universal, unfortunately, that we all know what it's like not to be believed. And I wanted to create a circumstance where it was also in sort of a medical situation, because there's also a lot of misogyny in medicine about not believing women and their symptoms and their levels of pain. and all of these other things. So I really wanted to layer it as many different ways that I could, that is still unfortunately quite contemporary. And I think just hearing someone being in a situation, hearing it, receiving it orally via your ear rather than reading it, there is something that just hits different. And I do think that in order to have a comprehensive platform for a book to make comprehensive change, you need it available in every type of format that is possible, in any way that someone is going to be able to get access to and digest the book. And so for me, I was so thrilled hearing that we were going to have an audio edition, because I knew that it was going to reach more people. It was going to have a whole, people are requesting audiobooks. I know from some of my books that have not gotten audiobooks done of them, I always get requests for them, and we don't always have the rights to that. So there's sometimes very little we can do. This was so exciting because I knew that it was just going to open things up so much more, and it was going to make these already very visceral stories that much more powerful because of that, hearing it. And then we can do the process of, then as we receiving these stories can start believing them, can start imagining, can start thinking, in what ways am I trapped as well? In what ways can I help other people get unstuck from their specific situations? In what other conversations can I have with people to try to fix this systemic problem that has so many different prongs?
Yeah, and it's all about hearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about victims, people not listening to victims, people not believing victims and survivors when they say so. Say, no, yeah, it's part of gaslighting, isn't it? No, you were just imagining things. No, I wasn't there, so what you said isn't true. So basically it's all, like you said, it's all these layers, right? And the audiobook basically literally forces people to hear. In some ways, not forces, but compels people to hear it. You know, sometimes the words are on the page, and reading it and listening to it are two different, hits you really differently, I think. So let's hear what Kate has to say about this.
One thing I wanted to, that your story reminded me of, Leanna, I just heard about on NPR an interview about a book about mothers, and it was Martin Luther King's mother and Malcolm X's mother. And Malcolm X's mother was institutionalized for about 25 years for delusions of racism. I mean, it's astounding. It's astounding. So that's been in my world, you know, just not amazed at that. And yeah, I know in the old days they used to say, let's go hear a play. And it was very much about, and of course we're used to, our ancestors grew up stories around the fire, hearing. So reading is wonderful, and I do it, but it's really neat to hear a story too. And I think it can give you, just again, anything that can help you walk in someone else's shoes. And sometimes with the narrator, that's better. Sometimes it's not.
Isn't it like the oldest form of storytelling anyway? Because writing didn't came much later. Formal writing came much later after people have language and started talking, right? So initially, and I was chatting with Andy Paris about this during his live stream with us, and we were talking about how initially most people were illiterate, or there wasn't any writing system, so people were gathering around someone who would tell them the news, or who in Dickens' time, someone would read out the story to them because they couldn't read. And there were also there's a Tom Hanks film, right, where he travels from town to town reading out the news to people. So in that way, verbal storytelling has been around for a lot longer than written storytelling as well. So I think we're getting people there, getting people in the fields for that, because like I said just now, listening is a totally different experience from reading it on the page. Cynthia, do you have anything to add before we go to the next question?
Sorry. I hope this isn't redundant in any way, but in the oral messaging or hearing, reading, so to speak, of a story, or at least what we try to do as audiobook narrators, I think, is really bring our emotions, and with that comes our lives, which hopefully you can hear in our emotions, because we all have different lives. So we infuse, everything we say with what our pasts have been, right? Hopefully in my narration today, you heard, well, a piece of me. And that doesn't happen when you read off a page, right? I mean, you have your own perspective and voices in your mind as a reader, but that is so powerful, especially with a message like this, like Leanna, I think you were talking about giving women a voice, or I forget, but powerful messages for humanity, I think audiobooks are essential in delivering those, because people will be struck by what we're giving them emotionally, where they may not be otherwise. So it's a chance to grab hold of someone. We know how hard that is, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. And coupled with that, not really in the question, but the fact that this is technically fiction, right? Well, fiction, but delivering a message that, right? It's entertainment. So where someone might not pick up a news article or change the channel when they're reporting something, this is entertainment. They'll click in and, oh, they might be moved, and, oh, I get it. So it's really coupled with your gorgeous storytelling. It's just this method, it's this tool to really, hone in. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, Kate, what were you going to say?
Done. I wanted to jump in on that, and I think it's something we brought up before, but gosh, how many movies and epic stories begin with the mother or the lover getting murdered brutally, probably raped, and the child killed, so that the man can go off and, have a journey and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? I can't see that anymore. It feels personal. It feels really, wow.
We should not be the catalyst for a man's story. We have our own stories.
Oh gosh, look at the epic movies. I mean, I'm just talking movies. We could go on about stories, but it's time for us to. So that's what felt transgressive about reading some of these stories as well. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So we use it. So basically, Kate, you hit on it, because I wrote in my introduction forward to the collection is that we, the Pixel Project has been around for 14 years, and in that time, we work on, there's, if you can imagine, an entire spectrum of the different ways that people can help stop violence against women, right? So on one end is education and awareness raising, and then all the way to the other end where you're doing where there are some activists working to influence legislation. There are other activists who are lawyers who are going to court and taking abusers to court, high-profile abusers to court. And then there's also the people who are on the front lines, hatching out rescue plans for domestic violence victims, who are helping rape survivors have therapy and rebuild their lives. So we're on the first end of the spectrum, right? So we notice along the way that yes, there are people who will listen, who will come to talks, who will listen to the news, who will read memoirs by survivors and victims, right? And they believe them. But there's a far bigger segment of people who won't listen. They won't listen to the news. They won't listen to the survivors and victims. And we've noticed that, Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins had a point. Sometimes it takes a spoonful of sugar to make for the medicine to go down. And we noticed, and that's why we started the Read for Pixels program back in fall 2014, and it's going to be 10 years old this fall, which is why don't we use story and storytelling to reach out to people? Rod Serling had the same idea. He started Twilight Zone because he couldn't report on. He couldn't do a documentary on racism in America, and a particular, I can't remember the exact case, but it was a very high profile case of a young black boy who was lynched, that was killed just because a white woman accused him of being, inappropriate. Yeah. And so Rod Serling went off, and then he came back with the idea of the Twilight Zone, where he would couch all these social issues and discussions about them and the points he wanted to make in story. And they got picked up by, I think, CBS at the time. I think it was CBS, right? It was CBS is that old, that older brand, and they ran with it. And he got to make the point. So that's why we decided to do this with the 16 authors who contributed stories of it. And then after it came out, and 3 or 4 months after it came out, we were introduced to Andy, and we started talking about this and about the power of audiobooks. And so and people are, more, like Leanna said, more and more people are listening to the stories, and we think it's helping the message get through, that people are, like Cynthia says, it's entertainment, right? So people don't have their backs up. They're not going, oh, I'm going to get lectured to again. Oh, I don't believe. They can just relax and enjoy the story. And then, at the end, they will suddenly go, oh, wait a minute. So, yeah, so that's where we go. That's how we realized that, Andy was right, and Leanna's right. We started with ebooks and paperbacks because this is our first anthology. And then Andy came on board and helped us through all that. And then we realized, yes, it really has to be multimedia, especially nowadays. That's why we're also doing the teasers. Anyone who's missed the live reading will be able to watch the recording with a little teaser of your readings, because it gets through to people's defenses. There are prejudices about violence against women, which we say it's a really, really tough topic for anyone to talk about. I mean, there are still families everywhere who just don't want to talk about, well, grandpa battered grandma, or the uncle touched all his nieces and nephews and his daughters inappropriately. Now, I'm not going to use stronger language than that, because this is kind of family friendly, but you get what I mean. So if we can get just one person listening to your reading or reading the book itself, going, oh wait, and then start realizing that maybe they have to say something. See, if you see something, say something, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so let's go to the next question, which is, let's look at the nuts and bolts, get down to the nuts and bolts of storytelling for audiobook narrators who, in the course of their work, encounter stories about violence against women that they are tasked to read or contracted to read. So Cynthia and Kate, can you share some suggestions for audiobook narrators for portraying female characters who have experienced rape or domestic violence or any other form of gender-based violence without reducing them to the sum of their trauma? Let's start with Cynthia.
I would say to try to really connect with the character, obviously, as opposed to being one-dimensional about, I've particularly done a lot of crime dramas, and those are the only stories in which I've read anything having to do with violence against women. And it's not really, the book opens like Kate's point about movies, with, 3 kids in a basement, and it's terrible stuff. But, so I haven't had any complex character. Maybe Kate has character work to do with women who've been victims of violence. But I would say to connect with their humanity. I mean, to not go, to your point, to the trauma, to the one-dimensional portrayal. What were their lives? Who are their heroes? What is their release? What is the respite? Like the ant in your book, Leanna, your story. It's hard stuff. It's hard, even the crime dramas. I'm sure Kate can attest, the gruesome scenes, the blood, and I don't know why they're so popular. I don't know why people like to read about this stuff. I ask myself that every time I get one. but it's a big genre, and we do them. It's work, but not my favorite. I should be quiet. But anyway, try to connect with them as people is what would be my advice.
Okay, Kate, do you have any experience like reading any books that really,
Yes,
look at
yes.
this issue?
And I would say one funny thing, probably because of my voice and where I'm from, I read romances. And if it's anybody in the poor, I live in the southern part of the United States. If they're poor, if they lie down in front of the bulldozer, if the baby dies, I'll be reading that book. So, but to me, it's and maybe this is a little different, but this is in playing it is I just will not let myself be a victim. I won't. And even it means like I'm more interested, or my character is more interested in surviving than it is something else. So that when, it does. So like you said, it's not like you're a person, you're cancer. You're a person who has cancer. You're a woman who blah, blah, blah. So if at all possible, I do whatever I can to give them as much dimension as I can beyond the the context that we meet them in.
Yeah, Robin Miles said something really, really interesting during her panel session with us and Eric Nunnally. She read Eric's book, and we were talking about domestic violence, and we're talking about how to frame stories properly, for these sorts of themes. And then Robin actually came up with this suggestion. She said, in her experience, she had an experience where she was preparing to read a romance book novel, and she realized that even though it's quite new, there was quite a lot of rape culture in there. And she said, hang on a minute, if anyone reads this, listens to this or reads this book, they might get triggered because suddenly whammo, out of the left field. That's why sometimes when we have one-to-one, Leanna knows this, when we have not panels but one-to-one discussion sessions with authors, we actually ask them, if when they're doing their reading, before they do their reading, we're like, is there any sexual violence or domestic violence here? Do we need to issue a trigger warning? So Robin actually went to the producers and publisher and said, hey, this is what's happening in the book, and I think that it's probably going to be important to include, for me to say out a trigger warning before people start going further into the audiobook. And when she said that, I mean, the light bulb came out of my head. We have that for print books, and it's a growing movement for print books, especially romances. I mean, Kate mentioned romances, especially romances, that they have a trigger warning. Not really, they don't call it trigger warning. It's just a content warning. It's a content warning for sexual violence, domestic violence. I mean, what did both of you think, Cynthia and Kate, of what Robin had done and suggested?
Go ahead, Kate.
What?
Yeah,
regarding the warning?
Yeah, going to the publisher and say, I think you need a content warning for this.
It would follow suit. It's actually surprising now that you mention it that it doesn't exist, right? It would follow suit.
Yeah. I mean,
I would
Kate,
ask please.
Sorry, Cynthia. What were you gonna say? No, Kate. What do you think of narrators reading? I mean, you all need to prepare, right? And if you realize that, oh wait, this really needs.
I would. I mean, I think it's wise to bring it to the producer. I'm not going to say that I don't have responsibility for what I put out, but I feel like part of my job is to fulfill the author's what they have written, and sometimes that means like if it's a creepy character, make him really creepy. If she's a really awful mother, make her a really awful mother. Really do the story justice. But sometimes, like after big Shakespeare show. Hey, I didn't write this stuff. Don't blame me. Don't blame me.
Yeah.
I'm
So
more an interpreter, lucky interpreter of beautiful stories and works.
yeah. So okay, so let's talk about storytelling and activism, and then we can wrap. Oh wait, let's put some of the comments on the page. So okay, so this is in response to our earlier discussion about, the difference between listening to audiobooks and reading. And it says Morkey says, when we read, we hear our voices or what we think we sound like. When we listen to the same written word from someone else professionally trained to deliver a story, it changes what we hear.
So true.
Yeah, and Misty was responding to the discussion just now. She says, literally, women are forced to endure mistreatment so that they have enough incidents to submit it when they file a complaint. And we have a beef with that because enough incidents could actually lead to, well, she died, she was killed. And they always do this with domestic violence, right? Like, oh no, we can't do anything until he does something. He's already doing something. It's just that, either he's not leaving bruises or, he hasn't killed me yet. What are you going to do? Wait till...
That reminds me, like, if you say your car is breaking down, do you have to have it break down so many times before you can take it to the mechanic and get it fixed? Like, why is this a thing for women, but your car, no, it breaks down one time and you go get it fixed. You don't... Oh, well, it broke down 4 times last year. So yeah, I can get it fixed now. It's okay. There's just cause.
Yeah. And one last comment from Misty, which is in response to Leanna and all of us talking about how people don't hear and they listen, but they don't hear victims and survivors. Misty says they're forced to experience harsh treatments over and over again before they're taken seriously. And hopefully the audiobook, I'm going to add this there, hopefully the audiobook will help people, will break through that they'll finally listen to what's happening. So let's go to the next question, which is storytelling via different formats and channels is a major tool used by women's human rights defenders to help push for cultural change. And in some ways, these audiobooks can be said to be oral storytelling for the digital age. The difference is that instead of telling stories to a small group of listeners who are physically in front of them, our audiobook narrators bring stories from print to life through their voices to produce recordings for a global audience. So Cynthia and Kate, since you're both audiobook narrators, so here's a question for you. So how can today's audiobook narrators, some of whom have huge fan bases, help advance efforts to address and end violence against women? Cynthia.
I would say we can actually seek more of this writing. We can seek more of you guys. Regina, you can, point us in the direction, especially those of us who have a few years in the business, like you say, or with fan bases. It's a responsibility that we can take on, and I think most of us will take seriously. It's a remarkable community. It's the nicest, most human community I've been a part of, and I've been a singer all my life in Broadway recording industry. There's nothing like it, right, Kate? I think you'll agree with me. We're all very human, and I think if we are pointed by publishers in the direction of books that message, we'll take them, we'll snap them up, we'll spread the word to producers. Hey, I'm around, give me this. Yeah, please.
Yeah, we actually have a list, Cynthia, now that you mentioned that. The Pixel Project.
All right, bring it on.
every year we have at the end of the year, there's something called the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. So it starts with the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and it ends on World Human Rights Day. So it runs from the 25th of November to the 10th of December. And what we do then is a campaign called 16 for 16, which is a blog campaign where we have literally every day for 16 days, we have a listicle every day of people who are working, different types of people who are working to end violence against women, different role models, different movies and documentaries you can watch. And we have an annual list of 16 books about violence against women. So yeah, so we publish that every year because people ask us, especially Read for Pixels supporters of the Read for Pixels campaign. They want to read stuff like that. So, you given me an idea. I'll talk to you about it after this session.
Yeah,
But
I think VoiceWorks would be very happy to produce all of those audiobooks at the end of the year.
yeah. So, Kate, what do you think? How can audiobook narrators help us? I mean,
Well,
you and Cynthia both have fan bases. So,
one of the things is that we don't, I don't much get to choose my work.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I'm like, oh, please stop writing. No, I'm just
Right.
some of them are, it's rare that you get a book that is it's about an issue that's near and dear to our hearts as human beings, and anything we can do to help it. And yes, you're right. We do have a platform. We have voices, and like I said, I'm a good. What is it? I said that. I don't speak for myself. I'm a better with other people's words. But what an honor that is when the words are like this, and when you get to, when it's something you would like to be part of. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we are going to wrap up the discussion session of this show. And just before we go, just if you've just joined us, you can watch this as a recording because it's going to be recorded on YouTube at this very page. But thank you so much, Angela, Kate, Leanna, and Cynthia for being with us today, and thank you to everyone who is watching this for your feedback. Your comments are really, really interesting. And in case you missed the start of the live stream, both Angela and Leanna have actually donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats that we have up as perks for donors at the Read for Pixels Ready Up fundraising page. I'm going to tell you all about it, and I'm going to share some slides to show you where to go. And our producing team over on YouTube, they are going to put the direct links to the fundraising page and to the pages telling you where to go to get stuff in the comments in the chat box, so that you can just click to go straight there. Now, okay, so Leanna has has joined forces with us to bring you 2 book bundles for U.S. donors only. And these are jam-packed with feminist ghost stories of both the fiction and non-fiction genres. And each bundle comprises of one paperback, first edition paperback of A Haunted History of Invisible Women, True Stories of America's Ghosts, which Leanna co-authored with Andrea James. Now, this is the first book of its kind, and it is a finalist for the Bram Stoker Awards for Superior Achievement in Nonfiction for this year. So we'll know pretty soon whether or not Leanna's book has won. And the second one is a special edition paperback, which is out of print, of Giving the Devil His Due, which was a finalist in the edited anthology category of the 2021 Shirley Jackson Awards. And we're also adding in the audiobook edition of Giving the Devil His Due. Now, if you are intrigued, if listening to Cynthia and Kate read part of the stories have intrigued you, to get, if you want to listen to the entire reading and also the 14 other stories in the book, go get it's part of the bundle, and it features some of today's finest audiobook narrators, including Kate, Cynthia, Alyssa Bresnahan, Christina Moore, Eduardo Ballerini, Nancy Wu, Robin Miles, and more. And also, Leanna will sign and personalize both bundles for you, but one of the book bundles is really special because Leanna has hand annotated those 2 books in that bundle. So she's added personal insights and notes to provide you with a fuller, richer, one-of-a-kind reading experience. And we would recommend that for Giving the Devil His Due, that you, when you're reading Leanna's story in particular, put on the audiobook while you are reading it. You will get full immersion there. And also, don't worry if you are outside the US. Angela has donated a really another unique goodie for a donor that's outside the US or in the US, just worldwide. And she's offering a guest slot in her show, which is called, I think, is it, what's this show name again?
Exercise Your Rights.
Yeah, exercise. I was gonna say read your rights. I was gonna say read your rights, and I'm like, no, wait.
We're going to read you your rights and you can exercise them.
Yeah, exercise your rights. There's WRITES, so it's a pun on rights. And it's Angela's online talk show for one donor who's an author to talk about their journey as an author so far in their books, and it's usually booked up months in advance, and with past and upcoming guests, and these include horror luminaries such as Lee Murray, Alma Katsu, Maxwell I. Gold, and Linda D. Addison. And the show will be, if you donate to get it, it will be aired at 2 p.m. Central Time on May 20th, 2023. This is Angela's promise to you. And it can be broadcast live if you want to come in live at that time, or if you're outside the US and you're in a different time zone and that's just too early in the morning for you, you can have it pre-recorded. And the donor is also free to give this opportunity to an author So if you're not an author yourself and you think that you have a friend who would benefit from having their huge shout out for their book to the book community, this is your chance to give them a really great surprise while doing so much good for women and girls worldwide. And we have plenty more goodies available from authors and publishers like Adiba Jagilda, Carol Goodman, Romina Garber, Therese Bahari, and Tangled Publishing, and more. And we're releasing new goodies every week, every Friday throughout March. So please give generously because we need the funds to keep things running, and our goal is $5,000, which is a teeny tiny goal actually if you think about it. But but we do so much on $5,000. So the fundraiser ends on 15 April, but you can just go get your goodies now, because once they're gone, they're offered as gifts by authors. These are not auctioned off; they're just offered as gifts. First come, first serve. If you want to donate and choose your own treat, do so. Okay, so I'm gonna show y'all where to go get this. So you can donate to get the goodies via our Rally Up fundraising page. Go to https://tinyurl.com/R4P Rally Up IWD 2023. And this is case sensitive, please. It's case sensitive, so make sure that you type it in correctly, otherwise you won't get to the page. And you can also find out more about the Read for Pixels program at bit.ly/readforpixels. Now, if you are curious about the anthology that we've been talking about all this hour or so, you can get the ebook and paperback from Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Book Depository, and all major booksellers worldwide. Doesn't matter where you are. And you can get more information about the anthology, including links to the pages where you can go get the book at bit.ly/giving the devil his due. Again, this is case sensitive. And if you want the audiobook, and we highly recommend that you get the audiobook. It's available now from Audible, Apple, Google Play, Spotify, Kobo, Chirp, and other major audiobook retailers worldwide. For more information about the audiobook, go to tinyurl.com/GTDHD, audiobook R4P. Again, it is case sensitive. Now, just going to give everyone a heads up that we are going to have a very special International Women's Day deal happening from the 8th of March 2023, which is International Women's Day, and going on until the 18th of March, where you can get in almost every online audiobook retailer except probably Audible. Everyone else, you can download this audiobook for just $8. So $8 for hours and hours of listening, hours and hours of powerful stories. So I'm gonna take this off screen. And also, if anyone wants to have a book plate, we have some Giving the Devil His Due book plates. These are limited edition, and they actually have information about where to get help in 205 countries worldwide for women and girls. So if you want one, go to the page that we shared just now about Giving the Devil His Due, and click on getting a book plate, and just fill in the form and upload your receipt from the book that you bought, and your copy that you bought, and we have about 10 authors who are happy to sign, including Leanna and Angela. I think Angela, yes, who are happy to sign. They have the book plates with them. They're happy to sign it and send it to you. And to find out more, Kate has dropped out. And to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, visit the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. And okay, so it's come to the time of the day before we log off. I know you all have your announcements, so let's go clockwise again. Cynthia, what would you like to announce for what's happening with you in the next few months?
I was just going to say that as honors as I'm equally, I don't speak. I'm a narrator. This is what I do for a living, but I actually can't really speak when I have to speak. I am nominated for an Audie Award in the fiction category. I know this is the first year I've been nominated, as well as being nominated for being part of the our anthology that was nominated. It's called Across 100 Years, and it's by Reina Grande for Simon & Schuster, co-narrated with oh my God, yeah, and her, and I'm really embarrassed. So yes, I'm very proud of that, and I also have a great book coming out, Penguin UK, called Go as a River by Shelley Reed, which was really beautiful. So look for that. That's it.
Okay, Angela, do you have anything coming out in the next few months?
We just released Unquiet Spirits, Tales of Asian Women in Horror. And so we've got all the things that are coming out with that, with the panels and the talks and the interviews. So that's pretty much my summer.
Yeah, and Leanna?
Yes. So A Haunted History of Invisible Women, True Stories of America's Ghosts is nominated for a Bram Stoker Award. So if you're a voting member of the Horror Writers Association, we hope you will read this. You have access to it if you're an HWA member. And we're really, really proud of this. And so we're still kind of on an extended book tour for this. And so we're also in discussions about what a follow-up volume might be. So no, I can't share any details on that yet because nothing is for certain. But I also have ongoing fiction coming out with a site called Scribed, so SCRIBD, scribe.com. I also do some audiobook narrating there of some fiction. And so speculative fiction novellas are coming up there regularly. I have several series out there with them. I have a few things coming up that are in the speculative fiction vein. And if you like Evelyn North Stewart, Evelyn Pierce becomes Evelyn North Stewart over the course of her long life in my fiction. Evelyn North, the story that Cynthia so beautifully read, is her origin story. This is the earliest I've ever given anyone a glimpse of her. But she's in 13 of my books. So whether it's the Magic Most Foul saga or the Eternophiles saga or the Spectral City saga, she's been with me for a long time and I love her very much. So one of the reasons why I wanted to include her is because she is one of my most beloved characters. And so I wanted to offer her as a bit of hopefully tantalizing, bringing readership into this extremely important topic by utilizing one of my most beloved characters. And so if you like Evelyn, there's a lot more Evelyn out there. And then you can go back and think about her past and come back to Giving the Devil His Due again to kind of have it come full circle.
Kate, do you have anything coming up?
If you watch WandaVision, there's a spin-off called Coven of Chaos, and I'm the head of the coven. Go figure. I'm a witch. So that's certainly one fantasy way that women have power, right? But we haven't shot it yet, so that's coming up. And working on some books.
Okay, so we have come to the end of this session. Everyone, please look out over the next few months for all the good stuff that's coming that Cynthia, Angela, Leanna, and Kate have have just told you about. And again, if you haven't got the audiobook yet, you can wait till 8th of March to the 18th of March to download your own copy, or you can go to our fundraiser. We actually have some really nice little bundles, audiobooks with beautiful wallpapers and ebooks. Go get one. Go donate. Get one. We will use your money that you donated to us. The funds will all go towards keeping everything going for our programs and our campaigns, because we have bills to pay. We have bills to pay to keep everything running. So please give generously. All right. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world. And we will see you on Sunday if you are interested in our next event coming up, especially Misty. I know you love our shows. We have one coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, the 5th of March, with South African romance author, best-selling South African romance author Therese Bahari. Thanks, everyone. Have a good time.